It was a quiet Sunday evening, the kind Emma cherished the most. The soft glow of fairy lights illuminated the cozy living room as she flipped through a magazine, occasionally glancing at James, who was busy in the kitchen preparing their favorite pasta. The scent of garlic and basil filled the air, blending with the soothing rhythm of a jazz playlist. As she reached for her glass of water on the table, something caught her eye: James's phone, lying face down with its screen still glowing faintly from a recent notification. Emma wasn't one to invade privacy, but curiosity tugged at her. Without much thought, she picked up the phone and glanced at the screen. The message read, "Looking forward to tomorrow. Same time, same place?" The sender's name, Mira, was unfamiliar. Emma froze, her pulse quickening. Who was Mira? What was planned for tomorrow? Emma put the phone back, acting as though nothing had happened. But her mind was racing. James hadn't mentioned anything about meeting someone, let alone Mira. For the first time in their relationship, Emma felt a shadow of doubt creeping in, a shadow that wouldn't easily fade. Emma couldn't let the message go. That night, as James showered, she found herself pacing the living room, her thoughts a tangled mess. She had always trusted James implicitly, but now a sense of unease gnawed at her. The phone lay on the table again, and temptation got the better of her. Taking a deep breath, she unlocked it, the code already familiar from their years together. The chat history with Mira opened before her, and her stomach dropped. "Mira, thanks for everything today. You're a lifesaver." "James, anytime. Tomorrow will be even better." Emma's heart sank further as she scrolled up, finding a string of messages filled with a strange mix of casual familiarity and secrecy. While there was nothing explicitly romantic, the tone was unsettling. It felt as though she was reading messages meant for someone else entirely. Her hands shook as she locked the phone and placed it back where she'd found it. She had to stop herself from crying out in anger or hurt. Who was this person, and why hadn't James mentioned her? Emma realized she needed to uncover the truth, but directly confronting James might only lead to more lies. She resolved to tread carefully. Emma couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, the messages flashed before her. The more she thought about it, the worse it felt. Was she overreacting? Or was this the beginning of the end of their seemingly perfect relationship? James lay beside her, his breathing calm and steady. He seemed so at ease, while Emma's mind spiraled with doubts and insecurities. Memories of their happiest moments together clashed with the possibility of betrayal. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to jump or retreat. By morning, Emma had convinced herself to play it cool. But the tension gnawed at her as she watched James move about their morning routine. His easy smile and casual demeanor only deepened her suspicion. How could he act so normal while hiding something so significant? She debated whether to confront him outright or gather more information first. The latter felt safer. If she accused him without proof, it might backfire. But the weight of secrecy was already taking its toll. Over breakfast, James's phone buzzed. Emma's eyes flickered toward it instinctively, and she felt a pang of hurt when he immediately flipped it face down. It was clear she couldn't let this go unanswered. Emma decided to take matters into her own hands. she began noticing patterns in James's behavior that had never stood out before. He seemed more protective of his phone, always keeping it close. He spent more time texting and occasionally excused himself to take calls in another room. Her suspicions solidified when James mentioned he had a work meeting the next evening, a detail he had never brought up before. Emma didn't confront him. Instead, she planned to follow him. If there was nothing to worry about, she'd put her doubts to rest. The next evening, Emma waited until James left the house before grabbing her coat and keys. She stayed a safe distance behind his car, her heart pounding with each turn. After about 20 minutes, he parked near a small cafe on the outskirts of town. Emma's stomach churned as she saw him enter the cafe and sit across from a woman, presumably Mira. They laughed and leaned in close, their conversation animated and intimate. Emma took a photo on her phone, her hands trembling. The scene confirmed her fears. She drove home in silence, her mind racing with questions. Who was Mira to James? Why was he hiding her? And most importantly, what would she do next? Emma waited for James to return home, her emotions swinging between anger and heartbreak. When he walked in, she wasted no time. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling but firm. James looked surprised but nodded. "What's going on?" Emma placed her phone on the table, showing him the picture she had taken. "Who is she, James? And don't lie to me." James froze, his eyes darting from the photo to Emma's face. "Emma, I can explain," he began, but she cut him off. "Explain what? That you've been meeting another woman behind my back? That you've been lying to me?" "It's not like that," James insisted, his voice pleading. "Myra's just a friend. She's helping me plan something for you. A surprise." Emma's anger turned to confusion. "A surprise? That's your excuse?" "Yes," he said, desperation creeping into his tone. "I wanted it to be special, and I didn't want you to find out." Emma stared at him, her instincts screaming that something was off. "If it's true, why didn't you just tell me? Why all the secrecy?" James hesitated, and Emma knew there was more to the story. "I swear, Emma. It's not what you think," he said weakly. Emma wasn't satisfied with James's explanation. The next day, while he was at work, she decided to dig deeper. She called Mira directly, introducing herself. "I just wanted to thank you for helping James plan the surprise," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. There was a pause on the other end before Mira responded. "I think there's been some misunderstanding. James and I aren't close. We've only spoken a few times." Emma felt her stomach drop. Myra's tone was polite but distant, and her words didn't align with what James had told her. That evening, Emma confronted James again. This time, she didn't hold back. "I spoke to Mira," she said, her voice icy. "She doesn't know anything about this surprise. Care to explain?" James's face paled, and he finally admitted the truth. "All right, Emma. I lied. Mira is my sister." Emma blinked, stunned. "Your sister?" James nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "We share the same father, but I've never told anyone. It's complicated, and I didn't know how to explain it to you. She reached out recently, and I've been helping her through a rough time." James's confession left Emma speechless. She had expected lies, maybe even infidelity, but not this. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she asked, her voice softer now. "I was scared," James admitted. "I didn't want you to think less of me. My family history is messy, and I didn't know how to handle it." Emma felt her anger dissipate, replaced by a deep sadness. While James's secrecy had hurt her, she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. This wasn't about betrayal, it was about fear and insecurity. Over the next hour, James shared the story of his estranged relationship with his half-sister and how they had reconnected recently. Emma listened, her heart heavy but understanding. "I wish you had trusted me enough to tell me," she said finally. "I know," James replied, his voice filled with regret. "I made a mistake. I'll never keep something like this from you again." For the first time in days, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. The truth was painful, but it also brought clarity. In the days that followed, Emma and James worked to rebuild their relationship. Trust, they realized, wasn't just about honesty, it was about openness and vulnerability. Emma forgave James, but not without setting boundaries. "If we're going to move forward, we need to communicate better. No more secrets," she told him firmly. James agreed, promising to be more open. He even invited Mira over for dinner, giving Emma the chance to meet her. The evening was awkward but healing, as Emma began to understand the complex dynamics of James's family. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was stronger. The ordeal had taught them both valuable lessons about trust, communication, and the importance of facing fears head-on. By the time another quiet Sunday evening rolled around, Emma found herself smiling again. The shadow of doubt had lifted, replaced by a deeper understanding of the man she loved. And as they sat together on the couch, the soft glow of fairy lights around them, Emma reached for James's hand. They still had a long way to go, but they were ready to face the journey together.